Hey everyone, it's Swank Ivy back with another Letters to an Asexual. This is 28, I believe. Today I'm going to talk about something that is sometimes a touchy issue in our community, and I'm going to read you the letter first and then I'm going to kind of expand on it to some similar concepts. So first, here comes the letter. This is an anonymous ask box request that I got from somebody on Tumblr, and here's what they said. I recently learned I'm on the autism spectrum, and I'm worried that I'm upholding stereotypes about asexuality. I no longer feel comfortable IDing as asexual. I know there's nothing wrong with being autistic, but some people do. And some of those people believe all asexuals are autistic. I'm not planning on telling many people, so it really doesn't matter, but I'm still worried I'm damaging the asexual community. Fortunately, I'm homo-romantic, so I can ID as a lesbian and not technically lie. And I will read you what I said to this person. Here's my response. If you don't feel comfortable identifying as asexual for any reason, that's totally fine, but let me just say something about the intersection of autism and asexuality. It's true that autistic people are frequently desexualized even if they don't want to be. And it's true that asexual people are frequently misinterpreted as autistic even if they're not. But there is an intersection there of people who are both autistic and asexual, and neither one of those identity points is making the other look bad. There is no type of asexual person or autistic person who needs to downplay or hide aspects of themselves for the good of the community. That sort of thing is ultimately not good for either community, because it suggests there is only one valid way to be autistic or asexual, and that you can only be either of those things if you have absolutely no intersecting or complicating factors, which truly describes no one, if we're being honest. We all form our identities, including our sexual identities, out of everything that is us. It would be just as wrong to say, well, you're just asexual because of your autism, as it would be to tell a non-asexual person, well, you're just interested in sex because of your hormones. It's pointlessly reductive, and not actually a good way to describe anyone's holistic experience in the world. This is a similar discussion in communities for folks with disabilities or illnesses. Some who are both disabled/ill and asexual feel like they're going to make the community look bad if they distract mainstream awareness efforts by suggesting some asexual people have complicating physical factors. I think it's really just bullcrap. There is intersection. It is okay. We are allowed to acknowledge that maybe an illness, a disability, any other aspect of our lives, and yeah, autism too, might be affecting how we express our sexuality or feel toward others. It's also fine if you think about your experience of autism and your experience of asexuality and think the two have nothing to do with each other. Some think there's a link in themselves, and some think there isn't, and they're probably both right. The asexual community is enriched by the neurodiversity from our autistic members, not embarrassed or undermined by it. That's what I think, anyway. Again, if you feel like asexual isn't an appropriate label for you for any reason, you're allowed to decide that for yourself. But I really would like you to consider that there are many asexual spectrum, autistic spectrum people who don't feel either of those identities negates or dilutes the other. And it's okay to embrace both, if that's what you'd like to do too. Just considering the numbers, it makes absolute sense that some fraction of both asexual people and autistic people would be overlapping in both categories. And I think it's important that we remember asexuality is a description of what we feel, not an explanation of why. As long as people don't go around saying all asexuality is a consequence of autism, or that all autistic people are automatically incapable of sexual relationships or sexual attraction or authentic sexual expression, then we can certainly acknowledge and embrace the places and people wherein these identities overlap. So, I think that response kind of sums up my perspective on a lot of intersections that people in the asexual community may have. I did mention disability, I did mention illness, I did not mention medications that people may take for chronic conditions or other conditions that are established to be like libido decreasers and stuff like that. Basically, I would repeat, asexual is what you would want to call yourself as an expression of what you're feeling, not why. And if somebody feels like, okay, there's an interaction between a medication that I'm taking and how I feel about sex, I'm not going to tell that person, you are an inauthentic expression of asexuality, because I don't like to accept that that's part of who you are or who you've become as a person because of your illness or because of anything that you've had to take for your illness. And just, I'm going to give you a little quick trigger warning here, is that I'm going to talk about abuse experiences and, sexual harassment. I will say that there is also this overlap in the communities of people who have survived sexual assault and rape, who are told that once that has happened to them, if they're identifying as asexual, that's never going to be as authentic as a person who hasn't experienced that, and that there's always going to be this, you're only this way because this happened to you or because you had a certain experience. And I believe that that is not a dichotomy there that we want to dig into. There is certainly room for people to explore their identities, for people to say, look, I think that I underwent something traumatic, and I would like to decouple those things and figure out what my sexual identity is, maybe with help from a therapist or help with just time passing and authentic interaction with communities to try to figure out, hey, are you feeling this? I'm feeling this. That can all help maybe work through some problems that are caused by trauma. But there are people out there who have been through abuse experiences, sexual abuse or non-sexual abuse experiences, that this is going to affect who they become and who they are, and this is going to affect how they express their sexual identity and how they form their sexual relationships or their romantic relationships. And I don't think it's fair to say that asexual is something you can only call yourself if you can't possibly blame it on something else. So I just want to say to everybody who has commented in previous videos, hey, I have a disability, or I have autism, or I've been through this terrible experience, and I also feel like I'm asexual, but is that cheating? Is that okay for me to use that? You should use this word if you feel like it describes you. And there's not an asexual police, or at least there really shouldn't be. I do recognize that there are people in our community who like to police the membership and say, I'm going to kick you out of this community because I don't feel comfortable in my asexuality if you're in my community. But we really need to be an inclusive community. We need to understand that people are working with and coming from different backgrounds, from having different experiences. They're coming to a similar description of their sexual identity, maybe through from different places and through different experiences. And we need to be open to understanding that we can call it the same thing without having it have formed the exact same way in our minds or from our physical existence. We're all going to be affected by our physical existence. It's not like, when you're a child, most children do not report experiencing sexual attraction. And then there's people, who are elderly, who maybe they want sex less or maybe not at all compared to how they felt when they were younger. And they're still not going to say, when I was younger, I wasn't really this way. It's just the way that you are at a certain point in your life is still going to be, it can have a name, it can have a label. There is fluidity, there is room for change, there is room to explore and expand. And it's not an inauthentic thing to call yourself asexual if you think you might not always be, or you think that that might not be a proper label for you in the future, or you think that there might be an interaction between the asexual identity and something else in your life. So, and then of course in the case of people who have illnesses, disabilities, hormone imbalances, autism, anything non-neurotypical, you may be living with these conditions or variations your whole life, and that is always going to be part of who that person is. So there's no reason that asexual is only a label that people can use if they don't have any of those differences or variations from the normative population. So that's my perspective on autism and disability and a whole bunch of other complicating factors. And I really hope that this helps some people who like my comment or may feel like they are an embarrassment to the mainstream community if they feel like asexuality is part of their identity, but they don't want to talk about it for fear of damaging our legitimacy. Please don't feel like you have to hide part of who you are for the sake of the rest of us, because I'm a community leader and I embrace you, I accept you, and I will absolutely say that in any mainstream interview or anything anyone asks me about this subject. I will specify that I accept and support the inclusion of people with these variations. Alright, that about wraps up everything I have to say on that subject at this time. And I hope you guys are having a great month, and I will see you next time I make a video.